this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
During Memorial Day at Lowe's, shop household must-haves for less. Save $80 on a Charbroil Performance Series 4-burner grill to chef up something special. Plus, get up to 45% off select major appliances to keep things fresh. Our best lineup is here at Lowe's. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 5/27. While supplies last. Selection varies by location. See Lowes.com for details.
Visit your nearby Lowe's on East 17th Avenue in Hutchinson.
What's up, y'all? Summer's got a different tempo. Everything's a little looser, brighter. One plan turns into another. You hear something, you stay a little longer. Next thing you know, you're somewhere you didn't plan to be. It's those in-between moments. That's where the ideas hit. Conversations stretch out, little memories sneak up on you. And sometimes, it's just about what's in your hand. That color, that chill. The new Tropical Butterfly Refresher from Starbucks. Guava and passion fruit flavors with mango pineapple flavored pearls. Yeah, that feels like summer before you even taste it. Funny how one small stop becomes the best part of the day. Start your summer rhythm with Starbucks. Try the new Tropical Butterfly Refresher from Starbucks.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
Less support through telehealth, but it feels overwhelming and rushed? Check out orderlymeds.com now. Orderlymeds.com was built to be different. Here, you connect with real doctors who take the time to understand your goals, review your eligibility, and guide you through a plan that's right for you. Orderly Meds provides access to proven GLP-1 medications like semaglutide and tirzepatide, including both name brand options and personalized compound versions when appropriate. So you have choices backed by clinical oversight, not guesswork. It's a simpler, more supportive telehealth experience designed around people who want clarity, care, and confidence in their weight loss journey. And your medication is delivered directly to your home in discreet packaging, so your experience stays private from start to finish. Do your research, ask the right questions, then visit orderlymeds.com/podcast for an exclusive offer. Again, that's orderlymeds.com/podcast. Individual results may vary, not medical advice. Eligibility required. See site for details.
Body Bags with Joseph Scott Moore. We've been at Body Bags now for, 5 years. Started in 2021. And over the course of that time with you, my friends, we've talked about just about everything that's kind of imaginable in the standard sense of modalities of death. Particularly when it comes to homicides, this sort of thing. And we talk about gunfire and knives, and we've even had a couple of swords. I remember we had one case where a guy took an old, I think it was like a sewing machine, and beat somebody to death with it. We've had dismemberments, you name it, we have had it. But that's the nature of life and death, right? Today, we're going to get into a case with a very interesting mode of death. Something that I don't think I've covered before. I could be wrong. But today, we're going to talk about a death that was brought about by using a particular type of chemical. Now, we've had poisonings, but this is not a poisoning. This is actually an attack on a father whose young daughter was in his house. This was a purposed attack. And guess what the perps used? You're not going to believe it. Sulfuric acid. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags. I've done the blended family thing, Dave, and it's when you don't have a child that lives under your roof full time. You long for those moments. You long for those moments where you have your child at home with you, those weekends, and it's something that you anticipate because you're wondering, what's going on in their little life, when they're away from you, and finally you have that opportunity to be with them. And Dave, the tragedy I think in this case is that it was, I don't know how better to say it, it was one of those weekends. It was one of those weekends where a father had his daughter with him at his home, and it ends up in one of the most horrific set of circumstances that I think that we can possibly even imagine.
I just remember you bringing this story up and saying, we've had acid attacks before. As a matter of fact, we've had a number of them, yet we haven't had an acid attack on an individual that ended up in death.
Yeah.
And that is down and dirty what this story is all about, that death by acid. Now, I remember a story that we covered about the model in New York who was attacked by an ex-boyfriend, and he threw acid on her face, and she came back from it and went public. This is in the early 90s, I think, and there have been others since then. And it's a shocking attack. I mean, when you use, in this case, sulfuric acid, Joe, you're aiming to, at the very least, maim for life. What does sulfuric acid do to the skin?
Oh, I'll put it to you this way. You know what it can do on metal? It's a corrosive. And so how much more so when you begin to think about what it can do to living human tissue. One of the things that people, I think, forget about acid is that acid is actually a dehydrant. So it can desiccate the skin. I'm reflecting back. This is a long, long time ago, but I worked a case involving a gentleman that had fallen into a vat of acid and this is something I haven't covered on Body Bags, but this is something that I was involved in as an investigator. Way back when, guy fell into a vat of acid in I think it was a tannery, which is, like you're tanning leather on like an industrial scale to make shoes and belts and all that sort of stuff. And he fell in, and his best friend was there, Dave, and his best friend dove in after him.
Wow.
Yeah, no greater love hath a man than he laid down his life for his brother. And
so the guy fell in on accident, but his best friend sees him and dives in, knowing what he's diving into. Not that it's an accident. Oh, my goodness.
I know. And the friend died sometime later, but I remember examining that fellow's body at that time. And the only way I could really describe it was, and I'm not being disrespectful here, but just so that our friends can understand what it felt like. It felt like a basketball, like an actual leather basketball. I'm not talking about one of these I'm talking about a genuine, like all leather basketball. It was tense.
Wow.
If you've ever seen like a hyperinflated football, basketball, where you just got too much air in it. And that the texture of that surface, that's what it felt like. And I remember thinking it was, it had kind of cracking features to it. one other interesting part to that case in particular, I assisted in the autopsy of that case. And Dave, when we open a body in the morgue, obviously, and for all of our friends know this, we've talked about autopsies. We use scalpels. That's what you use to make the initial incision. Generally, if you've ever seen television programs and those sorts of things, we do what's called the standard Y incision. It starts at the apex of both shoulders and kind of comes down. That incision marries up over the sternum, and then we go all the way down to the pubis, and it creates a Y. It's called standard Y incision. I do that with one scalpel blade. Okay. It took 5 scalpel blades.
Whoa.
Yeah. That's what it does to the skin. And that gives that gives you some kind of idea. And so that binding that takes place with acid and then the water that's contained, and we know that a large percentage of our body is water, right? Mm-hmm. And it literally dehydrates the body. It desiccates it to the point. And that's like if you see leather, for instance, Native American tribes used to do leather tanning in a natural manner. I mean, how many times have we seen some kind of movie or something where they've got like a deer hide, that's stretched out, and then they scrape the hide and all that. And and you can use salt and that sort of thing, but it kind of naturally, dries out, and you can make it malleable and all that. You got to work with it though. Well, when you're talking about in America, and around the world, we've done, when you get into an industrial scale of producing leather, all you got to do is walk into a shoe store, and I don't know how many pairs of shoes or how many shoes out there are all leather now. Right. I think you pay a really high price for that, but leather belts, leather handbags, you name wallets, anything like that, you're working on an industrial scale. So they don't have time to take, leather, that's acquired from, buffalo or from, cow or whatever, and stretch it out and have it's done on an industrial scale. And so you introduce, say, the practice of introducing acid into that, and when you talk about sulfuric acid itself has many industrial uses. One of the things that people, I think, are not aware of, it can be used, for instance, to make explosives with. As a matter of fact, it's been outlawed in several countries. You can't be in possession of sulfuric acid because it is so tightly tied to the explosives industry. Like if folks want to make a bomb at home, for instance, all right, sulfuric acid could potentially be one of the components that would be utilized in order to do that. Fertilizer is created using, sulfuric acid. It's a corrosive. It can be used in metallurgical work. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on, and all different acids have different utilities to them. So, we think about this, and when you think about the horror that comes along with actually using acid, where you actually weaponize it, Dave, it paints this really dark picture. I submit to you, my friend, that with acid, and like you said, there are accounts of acid attacks that we could just go over and over and over again. I don't think that it has the utility of being used as a guaranteed fatal weapon. All right, you're really running the risk here. If your goal is to end somebody's life, acid's that's not going to be my default position. Okay. Yeah. So if that's not the case, then why would you use acid? You brought up an excellent point just a moment ago about kind of marking the person, for lack of a better term, where you're going to, let's say they're a beautiful model, and you want to take that, rob them of that thing, which is not just their beauty, but their identity, and it's a weapon of terror. I mean, it truly is, and over the years, there's been, things like that acid has been used as a torture weapon as well. They do the, infamously, they're the acid drops, where they'll take bits of acid or droplets of acid and drop it directly onto the skin, right? And it's acid, sulfuric acid is one of those agents that is, soon as you come in contact with it, your pain centers fire. There are other things out there that are a bit more muted. Sulfuric acid is not one of those. So not only would it impact, say, for instance, because of its corrosive nature, the skin where it actually makes contact, the other thing that it can do is that if it has any kind of a vaporized element to it, guess what happens? If you inhale, it'll actually get into your airway.
Oh my goodness.
And it's kind of a double whammy here. And so that's why I tell you that most of these events involving acid are not necessarily meant to be used as a weapon, as a lethal weapon. They're meant to be used as a tool for marking, maybe even warning, and particularly in our case today, involving maybe drug lords that want, in fact, to send a message, even if there's a small child in the house.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
When people turn to telehealth for weight loss, they're looking for real support. That's why more people are choosing OrderlyMeds.com. Orderly Meds connects you with real doctors and access to proven GLP-1 medications like semaglutide and tirzepatide. No guessing, just a more supportive experience, and all shipped directly to your door in discreet packaging. Do your research, ask questions, then visit OrderlyMeds.com/podcast for an exclusive offer. That's OrderlyMeds.com/podcast. Individual results may vary, not medical advice, eligibility required. See site for details.
You ever wonder how far an EV can take you on one charge? Well, most people drive about 40 miles a day, which means you can do all daily stuff no problem. Go to work, grab the kids at school, get the groceries, and still have enough charge to visit your in-laws in the next county. But they don't need to know that. And the best part, you won't have to buy gas at all. The way forward is electric. Explore EVs that fit your life at electricforall.org.
This January, Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship takes over the ocean. The inaugural Bruise Cruise sails from Miami to the Bahamas aboard the Norwegian Jewel. 3 straight days with pool deck bare knuckle fights in the Caribbean, massive parties, beach events, DJs, cigars, tequila tastings, and non-stop action. The lineup reveals coming soon. Cabins are disappearing fast, and the prices won't stay this low. Reserve your spot with just $200 down at bkfsea.com.
Brother Dave, I got to tell you, one of the things that I've always kind of prided myself on, if you will, as a husband and a father, I've always viewed myself as a protector of my family. And I think that certainly as a man, if there's danger afoot, you need to be willing to put yourself between the danger and your wife and your kids. And in this particular case, I think that our victim was placed into that position. I mean, he's got his precious little girl for a weekend visit, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you have the situation that all hell breaks loose at his residence, and he's attacked with acid. But there's a bit leading up to this, though, I have to say.
Yeah, a bit.
Yeah, master of understatement.
Yeah. Here's what was going on. Okay, we've already talked about the drugs and the prison and all that. But when it comes right down to it, we have the victim, Danny. We have his ex-wife, Paris Wilson. And we have drug kingpin Kennedy Frost. Danny was trying to get out of the drug world. And in that process, one of his dealers failed to pay Danny, and the dealer skipped town. That meant Danny now owed drug kingpin Frost the money that he didn't have. Danny did not have the money, and it was taking too long to pay. Frost decided to send a message. The first message, well, let's kidnap him and threaten him. And he sends out Kennedy/Frost sends the thugs to kidnap Danny. They are unsuccessful. So next, Kennedy Frost reaches out to Paris Wilson, the ex-wife of Danny, the mother of their daughter. They have a daughter together. Frost intimates that he will pay Paris a lot of money if she will just tell them where Danny is and when he will be there. Paris agrees. So Paris tells Kennedy/Frost, Danny will be at his house February 21st in the evening because my daughter will be visiting her dad that weekend. So Danny has his daughter.
What a rocket scientist.
Yeah.
I can see where this is going. And how horrible. You know, and the other thing is that he's having to fight a war on two fronts. He's got a drug dealer that's after him. I don't know that Hollywood could make this up. Yeah. Maybe they could. It sounds like a Guy Ritchie movie. So you've got drug dealers on one hand, and you've got an ex-wife who holds you in complete contempt now because you've moved on with your life.
Right.
And you happen to have a girlfriend, right?
Yep. And Paris Wilson just isn't tolerating any of it. And so Paris looks at it as, I can make a bunch of money and I can get Danny turned over to the big drug kingpin, and I'm the winner. So think about the type of individual she is, that she knows her daughter is with her dad the night she basically sends the thugs to attack Danny. Now, that is the setup that night. You mentioned early on, Joe, about protecting, being a protector of your family. Well, the night of February 21st, Joe, Danny and his daughter are at the house when two thugs with a screwdriver break into his house. Danny Calahane is 38 years old. He goes beast mode on these guys. They're there to do him harm. He's protecting his wife, his daughter, his significant other, and Danny just, boom, he chases two thugs out of his house.
Yeah. Well, this guy I'll put it to you this way. His other occupation is actually a fitness trainer.
Right.
So I don't know that, he's going to cower over in the corner.
Not a dandelion.
He would probably be willing to go toe to toe. And all you got to do is do that adrenaline spike, where somebody comes in your house, but screwdrivers? Are you kidding me? Out of all and again, this goes to, look, we've talked about sharp force and penetrating injuries for a long time now on body bags. Yes, screwdrivers can, in fact, be lethal. All right. Mm-hmm. But I got to tell you, it's not the most efficient thing you can show up with in hand. A screwdriver, I don't know. I mean, why not a hammer? I'm thinking here, why not knives? But a screwdriver, this is the best you can do. Maybe it's just a thought of, again, I go back to, what I talked about with acid, how it's it's scarring, it's maiming, it's not lethal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This sounds like something that is more of a threat without some kind of lethal intent, perhaps. Initially, it's just to get you to comply with what the end game is here. But they came back, though, Dave.
Well, the screwdriver didn't work, and Danny, as you mentioned, he went beast mode on these guys and chases 2 younger men out of his house. They didn't leave, though. They came back with screwdrivers and sulfuric acid. The attack continued, and Danny was hit with the sulfuric acid, and then the guys ran away. Now, Joe, what takes place after the sulfuric acid? Help does arrive.
Yeah, it does.
Danny is in a lot of pain, but he is lucid enough to, he told the attendants, I don't know who they were, but he gave good descriptions. So
yeah, and he was still verbal. And here's another thing. He was having a clock. We don't really know what time this information was conveyed.
Right.
But he was having to claw his way up, not just through the pain, but they gave him a bolus of morphine.
Yeah.
At that particular time, for anybody that's never had morphine in therapeutic setting, I'm not talking about in an illicit sense. If you've ever had an opiate like this, particularly morphine, it puts you into this kind of dreamlike state. It's like you're a couple of ticks above being completely unconscious. Now it can put you into that level of unconsciousness, but you're not feeling any pain. Of course, a lot of that is dependent upon how damaged you are, and secondly, how large the bolus of morphine is that they pushed on you at that particular time. But he was still able, he was lucid enough at least to give this initial descriptor. I got to tell you, I can only imagine the paramedics that showed up on the scene and they're viewing this guy. Dave, if he was, I'll put it to you this way, they're not just going to see his flesh that has been burned. And by the way, sulfuric acid causes 3rd-degree burns, which is, just about as bad as it can get. There is a level of 4th degree. 4th degree means that you actually have skeletal elements that are showing through the skin.
Oh, come on. So that's how bad a 3rd-degree burn is right there?
Yeah. So we're right. We're right below the 4th degree. If depending upon the amount of acid that could be applied to a specific area, you could go beyond that. But, you start to get up into 3rd-degree burns, particularly with like a chemical event like this. The larger the percentage, and I know our friends out there are so bright that listen to Body Bags, they're going to understand this. The higher percentage of surface area impacted by either acid like this or just open flame, the less likelihood is that you're going to survive, that you're going to live to see the next day. But what's curious about this, Dave, is that after they were able to remove Danny from the scene, they got him to a hospital. And Dave, this guy, and I'm still amazed by this guy survived 10 weeks after an attack. And trust me, this was this survival. Mm-hmm. This ain't no bed of roses. All right. As a matter of fact, if you ever want to be grateful for the life you have, if you have an opportunity to go into a burn unit at any point in time, it is one of the most horrible things to have to bear witness to, because day after day with burn patients is misery. You measure it by, well, today is less miserable than the day before was, but you never know what the next day holds because they're always having to treat you. They're always fiddling with you. They're always applying whatever therapeutic measures they have in order to get you to a position where you can survive. Because burning, whether it be heat, direct heat, or whether it be a chemical burn, is one of the toughest things that in a therapeutic environment that you can tackle, because you're having to fight a battle on multiple fronts. It's not as simple, say, for instance, as a stab wound. Okay, so if someone gets stabbed, you've got a penetrating injury that goes into the body. Let's say the screwdriver, right? If they're stabbed, it might be just one spot, or it could be a couple of spots. Well, if you get in there and you can tie those vessels off and you haven't hit like a vital organ, let's say it's gone directly into the lung or the heart or the liver, it's painful, but it's survivable. And the person will creep toward health at some point in time. But with a burn, it's not just the surface area that's being impacted. You've got something that is systemically wrong on multiple levels. You're talking about everything from you're running the risk of sepsis, septicemia, where you'll get a system-wide infection. You're running the risk, say, for instance, of impacting your kidneys. This is one of the big problems that people have that have been burned, where they have renal failure, right? You have this idea of the skin that, and keep in mind, they're always having to pump you with fluids in this environment. And one of the most horrible things that you bear witness to in the wake of a burn-related death many times, and I can't say that they had to do this with Danny, but burn victims have to go through any number of different types of surgeries. You say, well, Morgan, you're talking about skin graft. Well, yeah, skin grafting is part of it. However, did you know, Dave, that as the body on these burn units, and it doesn't happen with every case, but these bodies on these patients on these burn units, as they're there longer, their bodies begin to swell.
Oh.
And one of the most horrible things that I've ever borne witness to in the morgue is you get these people that have been on the burn units for a protracted period of time, and they've taken them to surgery multiple times. And what they do is they make these long linear incisions in the body, and they're all over the surface of the body. And these are things that are done by the surgeon, where they're actually having to open the skin up. They're not going in to close anything. Well, the reason is that this tension builds up on the skin. And if you don't release that tension, you're going to have a major problem on your hands. So in addition to, and skin grafts would come along after that, but just to understand the misery that people are subjected to as a result of a burning event, it would make anybody weak-kneed, not just to bear witness to it, but how much more so to have to endure it. And so we go back with Danny. I'm really wondering about these perpetrators. Had they had prior experience with sulfuric acid? Because I got to tell you, as it's nasty business in the sense that if you truly know what sulfuric acid does, why in the world would you pick up a bottle of it and you run the risk of burning yourself? Because how many times have you guys out there ever picked up, I don't know, you're going to throw a glass of water on somebody, maybe it's a prank. I don't know. Maybe you did it out of anger, but you're going to splash water on somebody, right? It's a liquid, obviously, just like sulfuric acid is. Have you ever thrown a glass of water at somebody and you wind up getting some water on your skin? Well, just imagine, if you will, that splash that occurs, not to mention the leaking out of the conveyance or whatever the vessel is you're splashing from, but also the backsplash of it could get onto you. Trust me, it's like having lava set down upon the surface of your skin.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
When people turn to telehealth for weight loss, they're looking for real support. That's why more people are choosing OrderlyMeds.com. Orderly Meds connects you with real doctors and access to proven GLP-1 medications like semaglutide and tirzepatide. No guessing, just a more supportive experience, and all shipped directly to your door in discreet packaging. Do your research, ask questions, then visit OrderlyMeds.com/podcast for an exclusive offer. That's OrderlyMeds.com/podcast. Individual results may vary, not medical advice. Eligibility required. See site for details.
You ever wonder how far an EV can take you on one charge? Well, most people drive about 40 miles a day, which means you can do all daily stuff no problem. Go to work, grab the kids at school, get the groceries, and still have enough charge to visit your in-laws in the next county. But they don't need to know that. And the best part, you won't have to buy gas at all. The way forward is electric. Explore EVs that fit your life at electricforall.org.
Combat sports fans, this January it's the Bruise Cruise. Party with fighters, watch a bare-knuckle fighting event live in the Caribbean. Plus DJs, bands, and chaos at sea. Prices increase soon. Hop aboard now. Go to bkfsea.com.
Dave, in all the research that you've done on this case, did you discover at any point in time how they conveyed the acid to this location? Was there ever a big reveal for you here?
I am so glad that you asked, because I was looking for that specific thing. And when you were talking a minute ago about like water splashing, like you're carrying it in a bucket or whatever, I was trying to think, if you remember the show that was on Breaking Bad, where there was a certain type of acid that was used that could eat through steel, cement, porcelain, all kinds of things, except it couldn't eat through plastic. Yeah. And I was wondering, how would you get sulfuric acid from a vehicle into a house? And Joe, even now, that has not been cleared. We do not know how the attackers transported the acid. What we do know, these particular attackers, hired by drug kingpin Kennedy / Frost, were experienced at using acid as a weapon. So they knew what they were doing with this sulfuric acid. They knew the harm it caused, and they knew how to properly transport it. That's all we know right now. But here's my question, Joe, because this is what really has me bothered. I looked for the specific area where Danny was wounded, but we've seen and covered stories of burning with acid and things like that. People, as they recover, you were mentioning how the recovery is where they actually have to split. Well, one of the other things when a patient is healing, that as sick as and harsh as this is, the area that's been affected as it heals has to be scrubbed. And peeled back. It's just the most horrific thing. And I encourage you, if you don't understand, look it up, because it really will make you understand the medical profession, those people who choose a life of treating burn victims, have a very special place in my heart, because it's not something I could do and even imagine doing it. They just are special people. But Joe, they
are. And I'm glad you mentioned the scraping part, because, there's there's an element to burning that takes place, particularly when we're talking about these acid burns. There is a necrosis that takes place, and necrosis actually means death. Well, necro, right? Mm-hmm. And so, but necrosis, you actually have an event that occurs with sulfuric acid when it impacts the skin like this necrotic event begins to occur. And so the skin, and just imagine this, remember how I talked about septicemia earlier? This is kind of part of it. The skin actually begins to rot. Okay. And we don't want, rotting elements of our body are incompatible with life, right? So they understand that, these angels that work on burn units, they understand this, and this is part of it. Can you imagine going to work every day and knowing you have to, I wouldn't presume to get into their mind, but just from my little feeble attempt here, that you're going to cause somebody pain when you go to work. There's a lot of people out there that go to a job and they think, well, I might cause pain today. Brother, you don't know pain. All right. So you're going to, these people that you're treating, they're going to create pain, and through the pain comes the healing, hopefully. But of course, that's not the case with Danny, man.
Well, and Joe, they knew that early on. Danny was doused. His entire body suffered from acid. And I looked at this several different ways because I'm trying to figure out how in the world, but the description is he had burns over his entire body. Now, Joe, Danny was treated very quickly. They had rescue workers at the house. He was lucid. They drugged him up to survive the pain, because I can't imagine the agony he was in. He was transported to the hospital and treated, and he was able to speak with law enforcement, with investigators for weeks. But Joe, I mentioned the scraping, from a healing standpoint, where they have the goal and they're going to be doing skin grafts and things like that. In Danny's case, it was believed early on that this is an unsurvivable event. And yet he survived for 10 weeks. I find those two things to be incompatible with one another. How is it possible? Can you please help me understand how it is in this day and age that a person can have top-notch medical care and daily, minutes by minute, and yet he still dies from the wounds after 2.5 months?
Let me make an old reference here. If there are people out there that love old sci-fi movies, if you've ever seen the movie Aliens, which is the second Aliens, where this thing, whatever this monster is, it issues forth it has acid, when you cut it, right? That's what's circulating through the body. And there's those famous scenes where it drips through the blood, if you will, begins to drip through multiple layers of the hull, of that ship. That's sulfuric acid. Wow. So if we think about the burning, right, if we've got heat-related burning, right, like a flame, I've used the term open flame,
right,
or even explosion, it will be third-degree burns, but there's kind of a limit, as to the depth. It's the problem with sulfuric acid is that I'm not going to say the depth is limitless, but it's going to burn a lot deeper than like open flame. And so when the medical staff was able to assess this, they probably came to the conclusion it would be one thing. Let's say, for instance, it was a singular burn on Danny's arm, right?
Okay.
And it's on the forearm. Mm-hmm. Well, and this does happen with burn patients, but they see this is only here. Guess what? They can go to the elbow or just above it and they can amputate. And yet you'd have a busted wing for the rest of your life, but you're going to have your life, right? Mm-hmm. My suspicion is that there were so many critical surfaces that this substance contacted, that they knew, you can't you can't amputate someone's head.
Yeah.
You can't amputate their entire shoulder like this. All you can really do, and I hate to say this, but all you can do is really, you take this out, all you can really do is make them comfortable.
Oh my.
I'm just amazed. Wow. I would like to know how long what his level of lucidity was for this 10-week period.
Mm-hmm.
My suspicion is it didn't last a long time. I don't, for all I know, he could have been lucid up until he drew his last breath.
Right.
And while I'm talking about breath, let me introduce this into the equation. One of the things that happens with burns, it's not just infection. It's not just the scarring. It's not just the depth. One of the other things, and particularly when you're talking about something caustic like acid, remember how I mentioned earlier where you take that breath? Well, it begins to affect the airway, okay? And what many people die of is not just that initial acute phase where you've got kind of the burning of the lining.
Mm-hmm.
When you couple all of the other compromises to the system, they can begin to develop edema in their lungs. And what that means is that their lungs begin to fill up with fluid. Well, if your lungs are edematous, and you're in system failure, there's no way to clear your lungs. And I don't typically like to use this term, but just so that put it in the vernacular because it's used, it's kind of inaccurate, but many people will say that the individual drowned in their own fluids. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's kind of what you're looking at here. The lungs become so heavy and they are displacing oxygen. So we all know that we need to take up oxygen or survive. All right. We learned that very, very young. Right. Well, and it's just common sense, if the spaces in your lungs are taken up by fluid, you can't take up oxygen. Right. So the goal, I envision this medical staff kind of juggling running chainsaws, because they're having to fight this fight on so many different levels. When you see what they're having to deal with, and they're literally moving from one problem to another. Mm-hmm. That's why it takes incredibly brilliant people to work on a burn unit. All right. Because you've got all of these systemic failures that are going on. And you're having to flip switches all over the place to try to figure it out. It's going to be a combination probably of septicemia as well as respiratory failure, because his lungs just wouldn't function.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it really is. And, his ex-wife, who, by the way, still has her life.
Yes.
Okay. When I think about what was done to this man, and when I think about that it was over money,
mm-hmm.
coupled with her jealousy, I think it's important to understand a quote that came from her. And it had to do with the fact that she said, right before this attack took place, that I hope acid gets flung upon you and your girlfriend. I really wonder if Miss Wilson fully understood the depth of that statement. Danny did, because Danny survived 10 weeks in misery. And now, as happens in many of these cases, the only legacy he has is this precious little girl that is left behind with neither a mother or a loving father. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, And this is Body Bags.
Lost support through telehealth, but it feels overwhelming and rushed? Check out orderlymeds.com now. Orderlymeds.com was built to be different. Here, you connect with real doctors who take the time to understand your goals, review your eligibility, and guide you through a plan that's right for you. Orderly Meds provides access to proven GLP-1 medications like semaglutide and tirzepatide, including both name brand options and personalized compound versions when appropriate. So you have choices backed by clinical oversight, not guesswork. It's a simpler, more supportive telehealth experience designed around people who want clarity, care, and confidence in their weight loss journey. And your medication is delivered directly to your home in discreet packaging, so your experience stays private from start to finish. Do your research, ask the right questions, then visit orderlymeds.com/podcast for an exclusive offer. Again, that's orderlymeds.com/podcast. Individual results may vary, not medical advice. Eligibility required. See site for details.
You ever wonder how far an EV can take you on one charge? Well, most people drive about 40 miles a day, which means you can do all daily stuff no problem. Go to work, grab the kids at school, get the groceries, and still have enough charge to visit your in-laws in the next county. But they don't need to know that. And the best part, you won't have to buy gas at all. The way forward is electric. Explore EVs that fit your life at electricforall.org.
This January, Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship takes over the ocean. The inaugural Bruce Cruise sails from Miami to the Bahamas aboard the Norwegian Jewel. 3 straight days with pool deck bare knuckle fights in the Caribbean, massive parties, beach events, DJs, cigars, tequila tastings, and non-stop action. The lineup reveals coming soon. Cabins are disappearing fast, and the prices won't stay this low. Reserve your spot with just $200 down at bkfsea.com.
Here's the truth. You could literally be adored by everyone and then come home and still get completely ignored by your own cat. It's classic cat behavior. But new Sheba Premium Puree is a lickable treat that changes all that. They're protein-rich, made with bone broth, and have the smooth, creamy texture cats go crazy for, especially when it's hand-fed. Yeah, it's more than a treat. It's a fast pass to favorite human status. So feed your cat Sheba and go from totally ignored to truly adored in just 12 days, guaranteed, or your money back. Learn more at Sheba.com.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.